and welcome to a new episode of Bring It Up. It's me, Chiara.
And me, Sarah. Welcome back, guys, to a new episode.
So today we decided to face the topic of hate speech as a social issue, both on offline and online settings. And who's our guest today, Sarah?
So today we have with us Ana. She's a psychologist. Hi, Ana. How are you?
Hi. Nice to meet you. I'm well, thank you.
So we're going to talk about hate speech with you today because you are kind of an expert also on the psychological part related to it. So if you want to introduce yourself so that our listeners can know something more about you.
Yes, sure. So my name is Ana Afonso. I am Portuguese and I live in Italy. I'm actually, at the moment, I have a project that works mostly on gender equality, bringing together psychology and non-formal education, and also individual journeys for women's empowerment. That's mostly what I do. And we also recently created an organization, locally based, and we do activities together with a group of women and young women here in Camerata in Sicily, where I live.
Very interesting and important.
Absolutely, yes. So we thought about you as our guest because me and Ana, we participated in a nice workshop about hate speech. So we thought that nowadays, as everything is kind of done online, the online tool is becoming a super interesting and useful tool, but also like a space where hate speech can be brought up very often. So I think we can start like introducing the definition of hate speech, like what is hate speech and the different types of hate speech that we can find both online and offline.
Okay, so hate speech, it's actually very often I have the feeling that when we talk about hate speech, we are confusing it with discrimination in general. And for me, it's important to highlight that when we mention hate speech, we are talking about a very specific form of discrimination that is actually based on any form of expression that could be written, that could be an image, a video, it could be a song, a video game, anything that is promoting hatred or is inciting or is boosting hate towards specific groups that are normally related to identities that could be minorities, but also could be women, it could be religious groups. And so hate speech is dangerous because it's actually it can be just this form of expression as such, but it can also incite and it can also create a ground for action, and therefore it has also this impact or possible impact of going outside, for instance, of the online space. And this is not to how to say that. I mean, the hate speech per se, it's awful, but we also need to consider that it has a second step that could be action. So that we need to bear in mind that.
And Anna, refer to this. It's very important also to underline the fact that we can consider hate speech as the exact opposite of freedom of expression. And because we live in a democratic society where everybody has the possibility and should be able to express his own thoughts and opinions, also to look for this kind of information online and offline. But hate speech is also considered the abuse of this kind of freedom, exactly because it harms the people that are like addressed by this kind of hatred that you described. So if you see the situation in those terms, and then like there's such a subtle boundary and line that divides hate speech from freedom of expression. Do you feel that there's a way to distinguish the two and like to make people more conscious of the distance that can be set between those two sides of the same principle?
Well, yes, this is one of the main dilemmas that we need to deal with when we are working on fighting against hate speech and educating for human rights education, or for everything that is related to rights and to non-discrimination. The fact is that we are as human beings, and if you look at the different conventions or declarations, there is always an article mentioning freedom of expression, meaning that you can freely express your thoughts, your ideas, and you can also express your religion and all different aspects of individual expression. At the same time, these expressions should not hurt and should not be against the individual freedoms or collective freedoms of other groups. And then that's why we have articles on non-discrimination and saying that none of the articles in this convention should be used to hurt other people and to discriminate. But in practice, this is not so clear. Because the thing with limiting the freedom of expression, saying that no, that's you cannot say this, we will delete your post, or we will shut off your account, is that very easily it can be like upscale. And then there are even governments, as you know, that are using these to limit people's expression. But in reality, they are just trying to control people and activists and human rights educators. So in my personal opinion, that comes also from my experience, I used to think that no, you can't allow people to say things or to express them. But then I realized that that would be quite dangerous, and that the best way to deal with this is through education and through raising awareness. And of course, doing so, we are not impeding sometimes this from happening, and some people will be hurt and some people will be damaged, but then there is also laws that support this. But I think we need to put ourselves in the perspective of educators and youth workers. And so what can we do on this regard is actually not to ban a young person from our group because they said something or did something, but to work with education and awareness, and even sometimes to use what is already there as hate speech, to use it actually to reflect on this subject and to bring awareness on this. This is my what I personally think, and that I guess it's also very much related to the approach that we have as human rights educators when we work with the Council of Europe, for example, and that you can actually find in the manuals that I think Sarah knows, or maybe you also too, on bookmarks and We Can and Compass. This kind of work is, so this is based on my reflections. This is my personal conclusion. And then another aspect that I think it's important is, of course, if me or one of you say something that is considered to be hate speech, it's not the same as if one of the main leaders of political parties in Italy, right wings or in Greece, will say the same thing, because then there is also the Council of Europe as the tools they use to analyze and to define the danger of this is to look at the context, to look at who is saying, the outreach this person has. If it's a public person, then of course the impact is much different than if I do it. So that's why it's so dangerous, the Trumps and Salvinis, and also in Greece, there are good examples or bad examples of people actually promoting a lot of hatred through their discourses and any kind of communications they use.
Yeah, and what's interesting related to this final aspect is the fact that in the moment when they pronounce these kind of hate speech related sentences, or they fuel their debates with hatred, when people address their speeches as speeches that bring hatred, they are always there saying like, oh, there's not any more freedom of expression, one cannot freely express his own thoughts and ideas. And since you quoted Trump, there was this app they used, this platform that it was called Parler or Parler, where the idea was actually to be more free, to kind of be able to reach a higher level of freedom of expression. They described this application like this, and the only thing that was not prohibited there was actually to hinder hate speech related content. So there's like, it's some sort, sometimes it looks like a loophole or something where you kind of like should mind the way you speak, and instead you use exactly the principle that prohibits you from doing this to do that. Like, it's super complicated. What do you think about this, Sarah?
Yeah, I didn't know about the Parler app, so I for sure I'm going to search and look for on the internet about that, because yeah, I found it very. I mean, like, also in the last few days, something is happening also in Italy with the government and stuff. And I feel like I was reading articles and watching videos, and people were like constantly commenting, not with like very, we can't like say that would like hate speech, because the sentences were like very, I don't know, not so directly approaching the topic in a hateful way, but everybody was like justifying, saying, oh, now we can't say anything, I mean, we're not free to say anything anymore, it was just a comment, like let us be. I mean, it's just our our way of expressing ourselves, and it's too much also for some people. That's what I was reading about, that some people feel like that now online hate speech is so spreaded that, and many people are trying to fight against hate speech, that basically everything is considered now as hate speech, and people can't say anything anymore, like not even dark humor or very sarcastic comments, for example, because they are considered as hate speech, and people can report those comments, and those comments can be deleted, or pictures or videos or whatever. So yeah, I think it's a very like thin line between the two things, and sometimes, and it's very easy to step on that line and to overcome it, like cross it in both like good or bad way.
Well, I think that what you both were saying now just highlights the difficulty of dealing with this issue through simply banning or just deleting comments, or because then that's exactly which tools do we use, and what if we just delete something, doesn't mean that this person will not continue to, for example, to continue to use these hateful expressions in other contexts, maybe even out of control and reach. So I think it's really important to reflect on how can we address these, and if we always have to address it, in the sense that we cannot be always monitoring online, if we talk about online hate speech, to address every comment, because and one of the things we were discussing during the meeting where I met with Sarah was exactly like the impact it has on you. So if you are the target, or if you are not, but you are still very sensitive, how do you deal with that in that moment with that person, considering that you also feel something? And sometimes we just don't have the tools, or even if we have a very good way of replying, that doesn't mean that this person will change, because attitudes change in this context. It's really difficult. And on this regard, I once heard, I was listening to a podcast that I will then share with you. It's very, very interesting. It was about a Jewish guy in the US and a white supremacist guy, and they were, I guess they were in the same university, and they were of course in contrast. And what the Jewish guys did is started to invite these other young men to dinner and to have conversations around this subject, and they became very close friends, and eventually this person changed his mind. And actually the podcast is interesting because it talks exactly about what was behind his opinions, and the fact that for him that was true because he was raised with that idea. So it's not easy to just come to you and say that's wrong, because you were born eventually in a family or in a context, you were raised where for you that's the truth, and then for you the rest of the world is wrong. As for us, it's the other way around. So it's a very sensitive and deep issue that needs to be addressed properly. And maybe replying to online comments, it's not doing a lot. It can be a step, but if we need to really and we want to really change attitudes, we need to take other steps and to work more on education and awareness raising, and to have open conversations and debates around it, even at the risk of feeling hurt, because it's only when we say certain things that we can say, no, wait, that's hurting me. That's not true. That's hate speech. But if we stop people from talking, we will never have the opportunity to address it, and then it will just continue maybe in other contexts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's true. And what you were talking about, for example, maybe the hate speech is not directly like pronounced towards me, but I feel like in some way attacked because of it. For example, when I read online comments, the hateful comments, let's say, about women or gender issues, I get very angry about the people that publish those comments or those posts or pictures or whatever. But sometimes I feel like the best solution can be just ignoring them, like not giving them space to gain even more attention, because if you deleted it, yes, it can be a solution, but not on the long term. It can be just a short-term solution, let's say, just on the moment, deleting it and that's it. But he can, or she, the person that wrote the comment, can do it again. So he or she is not going to learn that hate speech should not be done, let's say. So what I try to do is just ignoring them. Like if I don't give the attention that you are asking for, because that's also, I think, one of the reasons why people make those kinds of comments, not because they really think what they write, but just because they want some attention. And that's what happens online mainly, I guess. What do you think, Ana?
Well, I guess that looking for attention, you can look for attention in many different ways. Very often children look for attention doing bad things because if they don't get good attention from their parents for just being who they are, or just being kind, and or just they don't have attention at all. So yes, it's a possibility, but I think that there are deeper reasons behind hate that is not only attention, and one of them could also be that I don't know if you, I mean, of course, we all compare each other. No, we tend to compare with people that are our same gender, our same age. So, and we, in this comparison, what we look for is for feeling better or sometimes feeling worse. But the comparison always brings to a sort of a hierarchy. So if I put you down, I can feel myself better just by putting you down, or I can get some confidence or security just by putting other people down, and this way avoiding my personal issues and my problems. But I think that very often people that do this, they have also psychological problems and their own situations that lead them to find also these hateful ways to these hateful actions or comments, because it helps them to feel certain way better than the other person. So this is one of the reasons I believe people is doing this, but also you could have fear. No, if you fear something, you put this person or this group down just to make sure that they will be kept in their place. And this is and if hate speech is a form of violence as this very function, no, it's a way to keep people at their place and to impede them to, for example, to take other roles that are their social acceptable roles, if we talk about gender, or to take other positions in society, or just to express opinions that could be creating destabilization or things like this. So violence and hate speech also has this function at a certain levels.
Okay, yeah, probably like the reasons are many more than the one I mentioned, but it's nice to like use it as a start to like try to discover what are also the other reasons why people use hate speech as a way of expression, let's say, of something that is going on inside them also, let's say. But why do you think that online speech is so spreaded? I mean, I always when I think about hate speech online, I always think that is so much easier to do it online, because people can use the screen as let's say a shield to hide, and many times I think that those people probably, if they were like in front of the person or someone belonging to the group they're addressing their hate speech, they would not probably talk about them the same way, because they would not find the courage to do it. They would not be brave enough to do it. And it's just, I don't know what you think about that. Why people like feel safer to do it online and probably maybe not doing it in person.
And also, now that you said this, I remember listening to a podcast where there was this woman speaking about hate speech, and she was like, when you do these kind of things online, as a matter of fact, you're doing, it's like you are going in the middle of the square with thousands and thousands of witnesses, and you're shouting out this kind of hatred against other people, but in front of thousands of witnesses, and you cannot delete it, because once it's there, like the internet is like this, it's going to be there forever. There will be always traces. So if you think about it, it's also like a paradox that this
thing happens online. Yeah, it's a paradox, actually. Yeah.
True, interesting this perspective. Before commenting on what you said, I just wanted to go a little bit back to our previous topic, that was I was talking about individual aspects, but that doesn't mean that we should look at hate speech from an individual perspective. We should look at it from a complex point of view, considering also societal issues and the culture we live that allows people to do these kind of things. So it's very important to also remember that it's not about a bad person, but like for gender-based violence is not the bad guy. It's about the context, the culture, a patriarchal culture, a capitalistic culture that enables and condones this kind of action. So just to highlight these aspects. And considering what you were saying, of course, we are in the middle of a square. I guess that's a very good example, the social online square, and everybody can see us. But in reality, not everybody will see us, because as we know, even in the social networks like Facebook or Instagram or others, we actually can see a very small part of reality. No, we can, and people who will see us are very few, unless we are not a public figure, what brings, again, the question of what is the impact and the outreach of what you say, and that makes it even worse. But even if you are in this square, like you can find ways not to show you who you are, and also you will not see directly the effects of what you say or what you posted, because so this is like online works as and this, it's not only being online but also being how you say, it's like I do it now and you will see it later. So it's also something that is not happening at the same time. So it hinders the empathic aspects that we could have, because if I say something wrong, I can, even we can say something that is hateful without intention, because just we are not aware, and this can happen. But then we see the reaction of other person, and if we have a sort of well-developed empathy, we can feel that, okay, I did something wrong, and then you can start a conversation, or you can later on address this. But online, you don't have this immediate result. You don't know what happened. You don't know if this person will even commit suicide, because there are situations of suicide based on situations of hate speech, or even cyberbullying and these other things. So this is, I mean, not only to me, this is one of the aspects that are worked when we talk about online, that is this empathic factor and the immediate reaction of the other person, and of course being confronted by with what you said, and eventually being in a group, part of a group that could also exclude you, because then it also works on the other way. No, if you are in a group that thinks the same way and you are the one thinking differently, then you can be even excluded from this group, what will not necessarily help to an attitude change, but can even reinforce it. I don't know what do you think about, if you agree with this empathic thing, or if you have other experiences?
Yes, I agree, because I think that if I have like the person that I'm addressing the hate speech towards in front of me, and I can see his or her reaction, like just for example, see her crying or see him crying, it would like in some way impact me also, because I can feel how bad my words or my acts were on that person. And online, you can't do that. I mean, you can't see the reaction of the person, as you were saying. So of course it's easier like to spread hate speech online for that. And as you were also mentioning before. You were mentioning that like a good solution for hate speech would be education, like starting from the basics, not just deleting comments online, but starting to make people educated on what is hate speech and what is freedom of expression and what's different between them. What are like the main ways you can like teach someone about hate speech, like the main activities, some of the activities that, for example, you can do, or also like we can do in our everyday life in order for like hinder the phenomenon online.
I will share from my personal point of view. I guess there are many ways, but one of the ways that is used, and especially at the Council of Europe, and I'm also part of the pool of trainers of the Council of Europe. So therefore, this is my experience, the human rights education approach, that is very much based on educating for human rights, and that when you educate for human rights, you educate for equality, for non-discrimination, you educate for openness, and to active listening to different people, to critical thinking. So these are all aspects that we need to develop. And critical thinking, for me, it's really important because young people and people in general, we are bombarded by information, and it's really difficult to even understand what is true or what is not, and imagine to understand what is right and what is wrong. That is even, it's a question of values. And it can just, sometimes there are websites that look very serious and very even academic, and they are just spreading white supremacist ideas and negationism and things like this. So how do we learn how to be critical and reflect on what we receive? So this could be one aspect, and then to learn about, for example, freedom of expression and non-discrimination, and to experience it. So experiential learning in this context is very important, because it's not only a talk about it, so from a cognitive and mental point of view, but you engage in activities where you can take different roles. So, for instance, you can take the role of someone that is victim of hate speech, for instance, and then you can feel what it feels like. And then here comes the empathic aspect, because if you, for example, were just commenting and being a person spreading hate, then suddenly you are on the other side. And of course, this is made in a safe environment where emotions and people's well-being are taken care for. But these are aspects that we can use in our education with young people, but also with adults, to not to impose an opinion, but to help people to reflect, to even show, to use movies, to use songs, and this is sometimes hard to speak up also, like if it's your personal life and it's your family or it's people you know, just to share what you think and to try to at least offer a different point of view on what people are saying. It's very easy to just be a racist or sharing a racist point of view. It's comfortable in a way, because there is a lot of still, our cultures are still very colonial, very racist in a way, that very paternalist in the way they deal with people, and sometimes are very small comments that can be very offensive. So to speak up and to help people to understand that it's also something we can do in a daily basis.
You know, I'm really happy that you brought up the idea of learning more, going beyond your own misconceptions or like your prejudices, because this is our theme. This is an idea that always comes every time we have such interesting conversation that embrace different cultures, these different religions, different opinions about life. There's always this message of try, look for information, seek someone that can help you untangle the ideas that doubts refer to such social topics. And another thing that comes to my mind is that the three of us, we all live in European countries. So our countries signed the European Convention of Human Rights. So we have more or less an idea of what is freedom of expression, freedom of thought. At the same time, it was super interesting to read that each of our countries has its own definition of freedom of expression itself. So, for instance, I remember I read about Portugal that after the Salazar regime, it was super strong in protecting, like the constitution states that freedom of expression is very important and everybody has to be free to express it in him or herself. And the same thing happens with Italy or in Greece as well. There are there's an article referred to freedom of expression, but there are specific limitations. And in particular, those limitations are very different inside European countries. So it would be super interesting if we could have our listeners to write down what is the article referred to freedom of expression and what are the limitations inside their own countries. Because I guess once again, we can learn something, we can learn from the experience of each single country and learn better what is this limit between your personal expression and the way that you can not only offend and hurt people, but also harm their lives. Anna, if you have some comments on this, otherwise we would like to thank you for being with us and expressing your expertise.
Chiara, what you said is interesting because it reminded me that these laws and specifically our constitutions were developed in specific contexts. So, of course, after a dictatorship, freedom of expression becomes very, very much important because it was everything that you didn't have. And there's an example of if we limit freedom of expression, what is the impact? So again, it brings us to the sensitivity of the question and how to deal with freedom of expression without becoming censorship or without because even different opinions, and we were talking about these, I don't know if it was exactly the meaning of, but we were talking about this census this morning in a meeting with a colleague, and the fact that we can disagree and we have different ideas, it's also important. And here in these different ideas, we can say, well, it is a hateful idea, let's put it this way. But if we don't have any kind of different ideas, what are we talking about? No? So it's also important to make sure that there is a diversity of perspectives, and that's through that diversity that we communicate, that we dialogue, and that we can reach a broader understanding of things. And that is guided by human rights principles, by human values, by, of course, the well-being of everyone. So, it was a pleasure for me to be with you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy that I managed to support your podcast with my views and with my opinions and my experience. So, wish you good luck, and please let me know when it's online.
Yeah, of course we will. Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you for being with us. And for our listeners, see you next time.
Bye.